There is a ship that does not sail, yet never rests. She stands in dry dock at Portsmouth, her black and gold hull weathered by time, her decks silent but never empty. Her name is HMS Victory, and she is more than wood, rope, and cannon. She is a vessel of memory, a monument to courage, and the last surviving warship of the age of sail. Launched in 1765, she served for decades before becoming the flagship of Britain's greatest naval hero, Admiral Horatio Nelson. On a stormy October day in 1805, off the coast of Cape Trafalgar, she led the fleet into battle against the combined might of France and Spain, and changed the course of history. In that clash, Nelson fell, but victory endured, carrying his body home in a cask of brandy, her timbers scarred by over 50 enemy shots. Today, she is the oldest commissioned warship in the world, still technically part of the Royal Navy, with a ceremonial captain on her books. She has never been scrapped, never sunk, never forgotten. Instead, she has become a living archive, a place where the past breathes through every beam, every gun, every knot in her rigging. This is the story of HMS Victory, from her birth in a royal shipyard through the thunder of battle to her quiet immortality as a guardian of national memory. It is a tale not just of a ship, but of the men who sailed her, the empire she defended, and the enduring power of legacy. So settle in, dear listener. Let the creak of her timbers and the whisper of the Solent wind carry you back to an age when nations were won and lost on the strength of wooden walls, and one ship stood at the heart of it all. To understand HMS Victory, we must first step into the world that forged her. Mid-18th century Britain, a nation ascending to global dominance through sea power. It was the age of the year's 7 Years' War. 1756 to 1763, a conflict so vast it was called the First World War. Britain, France, Spain, and their allies fought not just in Europe, but across the oceans. In North America, the Caribbean, India, and the Philippines. Control of the seas meant control of trade, colonies, and destiny. The Royal Navy was Britain's shield and sword, but it needed ships, powerful, numerous, and reliable. In 1758, the Admiralty approved a new class of warships, the 100-gun first rate, the ultimate expression of naval might. These were not mere vessels, they were floating fortresses designed to dominate the line of battle and project imperial authority. The man behind this vision was Sir Thomas Slade, Surveyor of the Navy and one of Britain's greatest naval architects. Slade had already designed successful ships like the HMS Bellona, but now he was tasked with creating something even grander, a ship that would outmatch any rival in firepower, speed, and endurance. The result was the Prague Victory class, and its lead ship would be named Victory, a bold declaration of intent in a time of war. HMS Victory was built at the Artois Royal Dockyard in Chatham, Kent, a sprawling complex of saw pits, rope walks, and timber stacks that hummed with the labor of thousands. Construction began on the Freya, July 23, 1759. A year later known as Britain's Annus Mirabilis, Year of Miracles, when British forces won stunning victories at Quebec, Minden, and Quiberon Bay. The keel was laid with ceremony, made from a single, massive oak beam. Over the next 6 years, more than 6,000 trees, mostly English oak, were felled to build her. Her masts came from the forests of New England, shipped across the Atlantic as ballast in merchant vessels. Slade's design was revolutionary. At 226 feet long, 69 meters and 51 feet wide, 15.5 meters, she was longer and sleeker than earlier first rates, with a sharper bow to cut through waves. Her 3 continuous gun decks could carry 100 bronze cannons, though she was often armed with 104 Watt Lanafo in wartime, Her stern was elegantly curved, her forecastle lowered to improve stability and gunnery, departing from the top-heavy castles of older ships. But progress was slow. After her launch on May 7, 1765, she sat in the Ordinary Swaros, a reserve fleet, at Chatham for 13 years, unused. Britain was at peace, and such a massive ship was expensive to maintain. She was even considered for conversion into a hospital ship. It was only with the outbreak of the American Revolutionary War that she was finally commissioned in 1778. And though she saw action in the Channel and the West Indies, her true destiny lay decades ahead. What made HMS Victory so formidable? She was a first-rate ship of the line, the highest classification in the Royal Navy. Her displacement was approximately 3,500 tons, and she carried a crew of 850 to 900 men. Sailors, marines, officers, surgeons, cooks, and boys as young as 12. Her armament was awe-inspiring. Lower gun deck, 30 by 42-pounder cannons, later replaced with 32-pounders. Middle gun deck, 28 by 24-pounders. Upper gun deck, 30 X-12-pounders. Quarterdeck and forecastle, 16 X-12-pounder carronades, short-barreled, high-impact guns. In total, she could unleash a palm, broadside weighing over 1,000 pounds of iron, enough to shatter an enemy hull at 400 yards. Her sail plan included 27 sails on 3 masts, covering over 54,000 square feet. In a good wind, she could make 8 to 10 knots, though maneuvering such a behemoth required skill and time. Life aboard was harsh. Men slept in hammocks slung between the guns, ate hardtack riddled with weevils, and drank beer or rum to avoid polluted water. Discipline was strict. Flogging was common. But morale was sustained by prize money, patriotism, and the pride of serving on the Navy's mightiest ship. Innovations included copper sheathing on her hull, added in the 1780s, which prevented shipworm and barnacle growth, increasing speed and range. Her gun locks, flintlock firing mechanisms, allowed safer, more accurate cannon fire. Yet for all her power, she was vulnerable. Fire, storm, or a well-placed shot to her magazine could end her in an instant. Victory's early career was unremarkable. She served in the Channel Fleet during the American Revolutionary War, blockading French ports and escorting convoys. In 1780, she was nearly lost in the Great Storm, a tempest that sank dozens of ships, but her sturdy build saved her. She was recommissioned in 1793, at the start of the French Revolutionary Wars, but spent much of the 1790s in reserve. It wasn't until Abdelaziz 1803, with the resumption of war against Napoleon, that she was refitted as the yacht flagship of Vice Admiral Horatio Nelson. Nelson, already a national hero after victories at the Nile and Copenhagen, chose Victory not just for her firepower, but for her symbolism. She was the Navy's proudest ship, and he would make her legendary. For 2 years, Victory blockaded the French fleet at Toulon, then chased them across the Atlantic to the West Indies and back, a grueling campaign known as the Trafalgar Chase. The crew grew lean and seasoned, the ship's timbers groaning from constant use. Then, in October 1805, came the moment of destiny. On the morning of October 21st, 1805, the combined Franco-Spanish fleet of 33 ships lay off Cape Trafalgar. Spain. Nelson, aboard Victory, commanded 27 British ships. Instead of forming the traditional line of battle, Nelson split his fleet into 2 columns, a radical, risky tactic. Victory led the weather column, sailing directly at the enemy line. As she closed, the French and Spanish ships opened fire. For 40 minutes, Victory sailed alone under a hail of shot. Her hull was pierced, her masts splintered, her crew falling. But she pressed on. At 12:45 p.m., she broke the enemy line between the French Bucentaure and the Redoutable. Locked in combat with the Redoutable, Victory's Marines poured fire into the French rigging. It was then that a French sharpshooter, perched in the Redoutable's mizzen top, fired a musket ball that struck Nelson in the shoulder, piercing his lung and spine. He was carried below, where he died 3 hours later, just as the British secured a crushing victory, capturing or destroying 22 enemy ships without losing a single one of their own. Victory, riddled with over 50 hits, limped back to Gibraltar. Nelson's body was preserved in a cask of brandy for the journey home, a detail that gave rise to the myth of Nelson's blood, later used to describe naval rum. After Trafalgar, Victory's fighting days were over. She served as a harbour flagship and tender at Portsmouth, her guns removed, her masts shortened. In 1834, she was nearly broken up, but public outcry saved her. In 1922, she was moved into number. 2 dry dock at Portsmouth Historic Dockyard, where she began a meticulous restoration. Today, she is 90% original wood, preserved through decades of conservation. She is still a commissioned warship of the Royal Navy, with a ceremonial captain appointed by the monarch. Every year on Trafalgar Day, October 21st, flags fly at half-mast and wreaths are laid in her honor. Visitors walk her decks, touch her scarred timbers, and stand where Nelson fell. She is not a replica, not a model, but the real thing, a survivor of thunder and time. HMS Victory is more than a museum. She is a symbol. She appears in paintings by J.M.W. Turner and Philip de Loutherbourg in films Artois like Master and Commander and Nelson, 1918, and into literature from C.S. Forester to Patrick O'Brien. The phrase, "England expects," Nelson's famous signal before Trafalgar, remains a national motto of resolve. In Portsmouth, she anchors a maritime heritage complex that includes the Mary Rose and the HMS Warrior. Schoolchildren learn her story as a lesson in courage, duty, and sacrifice. And in the Royal Navy, she is a living link to its golden age, a reminder that even in an era of aircraft carriers and submarines, the soul of the service was forged in oak and iron. HMS Victory never circumnavigated the globe. She never discovered new lands. She fought in only a handful of battles, yet she is one of the most famous ships in history, not for what she did, but for what she represents. She embodies the age of sail in its purest form, a time when war was fought with wind and courage, when empires rose on the strength of wooden walls, and when one man's vision could turn a ship into a legend. Today, as you stand beneath her towering mast in the quiet of Portsmouth Dockyard, you can almost hear the echoes, the roar of cannon, the shouts of sailors, the final breath of a hero. She is not just a relic, she is a conversation across centuries. And though she will never sail again, HMS Victory continues her voyage, not across oceans, but through memory. She carries the soul of an empire, the weight of history, and the quiet dignity of a ship that gave everything and lost nothing. So let her rest in honor. For as long as her timbers stand, the spirit of Trafalgar lives on. And in the whisper of the wind through her rigging, Nelson's voice still speaks. Thank God I have done my duty.